I don't see your views. I wasn't raised the way you were raised.
Well, if you don't feel it, don't come to my games. Don't bring black people and don't come.
One horrible racist rant has been the sports headline this week, along with a reaction from the National Basketball Association and elsewhere. But this is a bigger story than Clippers owner Donald Sterling. Racism in sports crosses leagues, genders, and global boundaries. So how do we affect a game changer? We'll get to that in just a bit. But first, some more shameful moments in recent sports history. Marge Schott was the colorful owner of the Cincinnati Reds. But in 1996, she was banned from running the team after making racist comments, including this shout-out for Adolf Hitler.
He was good. Everybody in history knows that he was good at the beginning, but he just went too far.
Schott sold the team 3 years later. Radio host Don Imus made a career out of being cranky.
That ass-eating grin he had on his
But
face.
in 2007, that couldn't excuse what he said about the Rutgers women's basketball team.
That's some rough girls from Rutgers, man. They got tattoos and
some hardcore hoes.
that's some nappy-headed hoes there, I'm gonna tell you that now.
Sponsors fled, and Imus was fired from his CBS radio show. In 2011, this grainy cell phone video was a huge embarrassment for the NHL. During a preseason game in London, Ontario, a fan threw a banana peel at Wayne Simmons, a black player with the Philadelphia Flyers. Simmons got his revenge by scoring. And just this past weekend in Spain, racism in soccer once again reared its ugly head. Another banana targeted at a black player. Dani Alves picked it up, ate it, and then carried on playing for the win. So we've gathered some very special guests tonight to talk about racism in sports. And the Sterling incident is the tipping point. Michael "Pinball" Clemons is a CFL Hall of Famer and vice chair of the Toronto Argonauts. Butch Carter is the former coach of the Toronto Raptors. And Morgan Campbell is a business reporter with the Toronto Star. So let's move quickly to this question. Butch, we saw the NBA move quickly to punish Donald Sterling. Is this a tipping point in terms of racism in sports?
Well, it's just the start. I mean, it's always been there. Donald is not the only white male that's 80 years old. So he was able to hide it very well. And as I've always said, the sons of the guys who wore the white hoods, they're a lot smarter than their fathers. Mm-hmm. They believe that they can share the economic value of things. So they do what they do, but they're a lot smarter than their fathers. No longer white hoods, but you know, they're taught to be a certain way, and we're seeing the effects of that.
But the NBA moved quickly. Was that important? Is that enough to change anything?
The commissioner said he was going to do something. So he's got enough equity with people. Clearly, the players said, hey, we're with you, that it bought him some time. But I don't think that we've seen the end of what's going to happen.
I think he spoke with great conviction, and I think it was real. But what I cannot be sure of is if it was an MPI, money, power, and influence, right? Because, as you know, the players get paid during the regular season, right? And so during the regular season, the games mean less, but the paycheck means more.
Right.
During the postseason, right, the games mean more, but the paycheck is much less. Yeah. So now in this situation, the players came and say, hey, listen, we've made all our money already. We're standing up for this. This game is not going to, we're not going to play. Right? And they have maybe their best playoffs ever. We're not going to play if you don't give him the harshest penalty. So now he's in a situation where he's going to lose money. He's going to lose revenue, all of these different things. I think he did it for the right reason, but I cannot be assured of that. Money, power, and influence talk.
Well, I think the right reason and the money, power, and influence are inextricably intertwined here. Because again, well, as you mentioned, right, the first thing is the NBA acted quickly, but quickness is all relative. 3 days in the modern 24-hour news cycle, especially with Twitter and social media, and it's not like we wait for our daily dose of information, talk about it, and then wait 24 more hours for something else to come out. The NBA actually had a relatively long time to think about this, so it's not like it was a snap decision.
But I'm hearing hints from you, Pinball, and from Butch, that the NBA did the minimum of what was required?
No, I think they did the maximum, but I think they were forced into doing that. I have to be neutral because you don't.
Will enough owners follow through on the
Butch
suggestion
may be
to
more
ban him?
qualified, to talk to
What do
this,
you think,
understand
Butch?
with his NBA
He
experience.
said he would urge his owners. The lawyers have to do what they need to do. They need to research the case law. But I think, my opinion is, I would wish that they'd set all the players free. They'd guarantee their contracts and let them leave. I think that everybody wants to have this moral hanging of this guy. I think it's a lot better if you leave him there with a D-League team, let the players go, all right, and then protect them going forward. Because the worst thing Pete Rozelle did in the NFL was get into a long legal battle with Al Davis, all right? And all that money that was wasted on that legal battle could have been put into the community to mend the relationships as communities need with their professional teams.
So you don't think he was saying that the head of the NBA, that he thinks he'll be able to get the 3/4 to push him out? You don't see that happening?
No, my point is he needs time, because the players saying, hey, if you don't do something, we ain't playing. It's not that we're going to protest anymore. We're past the throwing the shirts on the floor. We are not playing. So all smart people that built billion-dollar businesses have lawyers that are telling them, here's our position and here's the history of the case law pertaining what we're seeing.
Well, and I don't know that Donald Sterling is inclined to sell this team. So even if these other 29 owners say, and I don't think it'll be a unanimous vote, again, because of the way this evidence against Donald Sterling was procured. Here we have a private conversation that Donald Sterling did not consent to having recorded.
But he's admitted that it was him.
Well, it doesn't matter, because if he goes to court and says, hey, I did not consent
So
to
are we
recording
not
this.
at a tipping point? This is just a nasty bit of business
At the tipping point, I think saying racist remarks might be the least racist thing Donald Sterling has ever done. Remember, I keep bringing this up. This is a guy who made a record payment in a housing discrimination lawsuit. People know Donald Sterling's history. It never bothered the NBA until he started saying racist things about specific NBA players like Magic Johnson and saying things in a way that reflected poorly on the league. Now, all of a sudden, the NBA has a problem.
Well, there's been all of this talk about the plantation teams and the white owners and the black players, and now there's all this talk. There are a few black part owners on a number of teams. Now, Oprah has expressed an interest if he does end up selling. Is that what could make the difference someday? I mean, how important is that? Pinball.
Well, I think the conversation's important, right? And that really is what takes us to the next place. This is an exception, I believe. I do believe that this is an exception, because what was different about this is that when you reach a certain status, like Magic Johnson, you get a pass. Generally, you get a pass. You don't talk about Magic Johnson the same way you do about black people. Magic Johnson is he's earned his pass.
He's
right?
a billionaire too.
Yes, not million, billion, right? They start to talk a different language when you get to the hundreds of millions of dollars. So he, and not just because of the money he has, it's the influence he has. He's reached a certain status. So usually as a superstar, you don't speak this kind of a language. And so I think there are some different things. Certainly racism is an undertow. It's an underlying thing. I think as we get younger, we get better at this, because younger people have less memory of all the scars and the different things. We as a people have to ask ourselves the question, because he spoke in a private conversation. And for me, the private part makes it questionably legally, but it affirms it from a character perspective, because characters like film, what you do in the dark is really who you are, right? So that's the earnest part of who he is. Whether it was fair or not, we can argue, but that's the earnest part of who he is.
So, Butch, where are we in terms of the future? He may, or sounds like you don't think that he will be pushed out.
Well,
what would it take?
The issue is, I don't think they will attempt to push him out. He'll probably fight it. But the reality, what the tipping point was, that all the players said, we are together on this. In the history of labor relations for basketball players, the strongest guys came out and said, hey, I'm not playing, I'm doing something else. And they're picking up the phone and they're talking to everybody else. And before, we would always separate, all right? It wouldn't stay on the same page. This is unified across the board. But then Mr. Mason, head of the Player Association, said, hey, we love what the commissioner did today, but we're looking for a schedule.
But will there be enough support from, even if it's from outside, from sponsors, Morgan, to push the owners to be more supportive of the players even?
I don't know that the moral impetus is going to be strong enough to push Donald Sterling to sell the team. But again, as time goes on, because let's remember that Donald Sterling still owns this team. So if people rush back to buy Clippers tickets, Clippers merchandise, Donald Sterling is this absentee owner. But if sponsors say, heading into next season, I'm not renewing. As a matter of fact, cancel my sponsorship. If season ticket holders say, cancel my sponsorship. If people stop watching on television and revenue drops, Donald Sterling is spending more and more money fighting, this action to force him to sell the team. That actually might in turn force him to sell the team, but he's not going to sell the team because he thinks it's the right thing to do. He thinks the right thing to do is holding on to the team.
Is Canada different? We like to think that it's different, and yet we saw a banana thrown. I mean, our big game is hockey, a banana thrown at a hockey player.
Well, I used to say that there's a different starting point here, right? If at home, when I go into a bank, they're going to assume that I'm incompetent, and I have to prove my competence. Here, when I walk into a bank, they're going to assume I'm competent, and I have to prove my incompetence. So there's a different starting point here. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but there's a different starting point. But there's an old saying when we were growing up, there's enough good in the worst of us and enough bad in the best of us that it behooves all of us not to talk about the rest of us. So as a part of this, let's be careful not to be too critical about Mr. Sterling and be more critical about our own lives and what we do.
Are we better? Are there no Donald Sterlings in Canada?
Oh, you got some here. But I guarantee you they're watching Mr. Sterling and making sure no one's taping them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's better here. For me, it's better here. That's why I stayed. I like going in the elevator and saying hello to people, have a nice day. I mean, I agree with Pinball. That was very well put. The starting point is different, right? You have respect. Canadians give respect. And then you may stumble your way out of it, but they give respect. And for me, when I land in the airport, I'm coming home. So,
Yes.
as bad as it may be for some people, it's better than south of the Mason-Dixon.
Thanks so much. It was wonderful to hear from all of you. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.